Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, you're welcome, and if you're a returning subscriber, you're welcome as well. So in today's video, we're going to learn how to draft this bustier. If this is something you like to learn, kindly watch this video to the end. So guys, I have my starting point here and I have my pattern paper, and I've gone ahead to mark my starting point. So from the starting point, I'm going to be marking the shoulder line, okay, the chest line of 7 inches. All right, I'm going to be marking the chest line of 7 inches, and then my shoulder to shoulder measurement of 7 inches as well, and I'm going to be stopping at the shoulder line. So once I'm done, I'm going to connect the chest line. Okay, I'll connect the chest line mark and also connect the shoulder line mark as well, which is the armhole line. So after that, the next thing I'm going to do is to measure from the shoulder to the bust line, which is 9 inches, then shoulder to the under bust, which is 13 inches, then again shoulder to the length of the top, which is 20 inches. All right, so the shoulder to the length of the top is 20 inches, just as you can see, and I'm going to be connecting all of the marks together. So once I'm done, I'm just going to label chest line, bust line, under bust line, and the top line. So the next thing I'm going to do right now, marking the neck width of 3 inches, and then I'm taking the 1 inch shoulder slope here, and I'm going to be connecting the 3 inches neck width to the shoulder slope. So after I'm done, the next thing I'm going to do right now is to measure the distance I have from my under bust to my bust line. Okay, and the distance I have there is 3.5 inches, and I'm going to be marking the 3.5 inches from the bust line upward, and I'm going to take the mark here. So that mark is going to serve as the neckline for this bustier. So the next thing is to take my half of my dart intake, which is going to be 3.5. Okay, half of my dart is 3.5. That is half of my nipple to nipple measurement is 3.5. So the next thing is to determine half of my shoulder line here, and half of it is going to be 2 inches, and then I'm going to connect my dart line to that 2 inches at the shoulder line. So after doing that, what I'm just going to do is to come down from my bust line by 1 inch to create room for my bust, and I'm going to be taking 1 inch on both sides of my bustier. I'll also come to the top length and also take 1 inch on both sides of my dart. So on the upper part here, which is going to serve as the neckline, we are going to be taking 2 inches away up here as well. So on the side that is going towards the center front, I'm going to be taking 3/4 of an inch, and the side that is going towards the armhole side, I'm going to be taking 1/4. So at the end of the day, I'm taking 2 inches away from the top as well. So right now, what I'm going to do now is so if you want yours to have a yoke, then you create your armhole curve and also create the neck area. But since this is an off shoulder bustier, I don't need a yoke, so I don't need to connect the armhole curve and the neck. So I'm just going to roll all my darts together, all the dart intake. I'm going to be rolling it together, and I'm going to use my curve ruler here. I'll also repeat the same thing on the other side. So just make sure you blend it well. I'll also repeat the same on the top part of the bustier as well. So once you are done, just make sure you blend your cup properly. Okay, you can see what I'm doing now. I'm trying to blend it very well. So the next thing we are going to do now is, since this is a bustier, I'll be coming down by 1/2 inch from the actual chest line so as to create room under the arm. So the new 1/2 inch I came down with is going to serve as the chest line, and that is what we are going to use when I'm cutting the back. So for the neck, to create the sweetheart neck, you can actually use your chest line for how deep you want the sweetheart neck to be, but I want mine to be deep a little. So from the chest line, from the actual chest line, I'll just come down a little bit again by 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to connect to the top of where I have my dart. Just watch what I'm doing and you're going to get it. So I'll just use my curve ruler now to create the sweetheart neckline, but I felt like the neckline is not as curved as I want it to be, so I'm going to clean it off now and then remark it. Okay, I want it to be curved more than the way it is, so I'm just going to clean it out and remark it. So right now the curve is okay now. So what I'm going to do is to curve this part, but before I do that, I'm going to mark out the quarter of my bust and then add the dart intake we are taking away from there to the quarter of my bust. Okay, and I'm just going to extend this line. You can do this measurement on the new 1/2 inch that I marked downward. Okay, instead of marking it at the actual chest line, just mark it at the 1/2 inch that I marked downward. So just connect by using your curve ruler to this 1 inch here. Okay, just try and blend any sharp edge you have around there, just like the way I'm doing it now. Okay, so if you want it to come up a little, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to curve it a little, you can still do that. So I'm just curving it up a little bit on that side. So this is how I want it. So right now I've used my marker to highlight all of the points together. You can see what it looks like. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is to start taking all of my measurements. So like I said, my bust measurement, quarter of my bust, you had the 2 inches that you take away, you add it there, and then also add your side seam allowance to it. Okay, so I'm going to add it there. I'm also going to repeat the same thing for the bust, for the under bust line. Okay, you repeat the same thing for the under bust line. You are going to measure the quarter of your under bust plus the 2 inches dart intake we are taking away from there, and then you add your side seam allowance. After doing that, I'll also repeat the same process for the top length as well. So the top length, I'm going to be inserting the quarter of my lower waist plus the dart intake I'm taking away and the side seam allowance. So once that is done, I'll just go ahead and connect all of these points together. So this is what I have after connecting all the points together. So I'm just going up here by 1 inch, and then I'm going to be curving it down. It is important you curve it this way, okay, to avoid any sharp edge around there. Now on the part of this dart area, when you're cutting on your fabric, remember to add your 1/2 inch on the top of the neck and also in the front of all of the darts. You're also going to be adding it to the lower part of this pattern. So I'll go ahead and cut this out. So at this point, I don't know why I didn't cut out this dart actually. So when you want to cut off the back dart, when you want to cut out the back pattern, make sure you're ready to cut out the darts at the front. So right now I'm just marking my zipper allowance of 1.5 inches, and I'm going to be placing the center front at that mark that I marked as the zipper allowance. So we are going to be tracing the new chest line, okay, because the new chest line is also going to serve as the back neckline. All right, I'm also going to be marking the length on this place. So when you're using your front pattern to cut the back pattern, make sure that the under bust dart on both sides of this pattern is facing is on top of each other. Okay, so doing mine like this, I ended up having excess at the back. All right, so this is the back neckline, but I decided to come down a little bit from the actual back neckline. So you can see this is the neckline, so I'm just coming down by about 1 inch at the zipper area. Okay, so I'm going to connect from that 1 inch back to the neckline. All right, so I'm just going in by 1/2 inch to avoid zipper bulge, to eliminate the zipper bulge at the back area there. You can simply also mark out your under bust, okay, or your waist measurement, and also take the 1/2 inch from there as well. So I'm just trying to cut off the excess allowance I have at the back, because placing the front pattern like that on the pattern, you end up having excess. So I'm just cutting off the excesses that I have at the back. Make sure you also add your zipper bulge. The zipper bulge you take away, make sure you add it back to your side seam allowance. So I'm also connecting the dart. I've used the front pattern to mark where I'm going to have the darts at the back, and I've gone ahead to mark it out. So I'm also going to be taking 1 inch, 1/2 inch on both sides of the back dart as well, as you can see. So I'm trying to mark out the waist so that I can also take the 1/2 inch away from the waist area. Okay, I'm taking 1/2 inch on both sides around the waist area as well, and I'm going to be connecting all of the dart legs together. You can see what I'm doing right here. So this is what I have after drafting the back neck. So I'll just go ahead now and cut this out. So you are going to be adding seam allowance to the neck of the back, the lower parts, the bottom of the back pattern, and also where you have the dart. Okay, remember, you can see that I opened the dart up, so you're going to be adding 1/2 inch seam allowance to it. Now you're going to be notching where you have the dart, because the dart, where you have the dart and your zipper allowance, might look a little bit confusing. So you have to notch it so that you know which one is for the dart and which one is for the zipper allowance. So I'm going ahead now to cut off the front as well. So this is what it's going to look like for the front. Like I said, if you want to cut the back, you must have cut out the front like this, and this is how you're going to be placing the front on the pattern paper to cut out your back pieces. So right here, I've gone ahead to cut interfacing for all of the fabric and the lining, and I've also ironed the interfacing on them. Remember, you're going to be adding your seam allowance all around the pattern, aside where you have the side seam, which I've already added the side seam to it. All right, so this particular bustier, I'm not adding any wording to it. Okay, so in my next video, I'm going to show us how to sew all of this together. So thank you guys for watching this video to the end.